The film begins in post-World War I England. Florence Cathcart is a ghost hunter who exposes imposters such as mediums and ghost hunters. She knocks on the door, and a woman opens it for her. Several individuals have gathered to execute what appears to be a ceremony. Another lady appears, her face hidden, and murders a crow in front of everyone. The dead bird is placed in a glass container, and as the rite begins, the crow begins to deteriorate and rot. One of the ritual participants begins to see her dead daughter in the glass jar. We now know that this ceremony allows people to reconnect with their deceased loved ones. Florence, on the other hand, appears from behind and unmasks everyone engaged in this fake ritual. The girl in the glass was actually a tiny boy who stood behind the mother. He was dressed in a wig and a face mask. The cops come and arrest the con artists. Florence is fatigued after revealing this fake scene. A guy named Robert Mallory comes to her home, seeking for assistance. He claims to be a history teacher at a boarding school for boys. He tells that a boy called Walter Portland died at his school recently after being terrified by a ghost. Other boys claim to have witnessed it as well. Before the school was established, there was a child who lived there, and he is now seen as a ghost. Robert wishes for her to discover the truth. Florence initially denies, but Robert presents proof to support the case. He displays school photographs taken over a 20-year span. Every image features the same ghost boy. Florence agrees to go to the school since she is now intrigued and believes that something genuinely weird is going on there. Florence is given a tour of the neighborhood at the school. They lead her to the classroom where Tom, the ghostly boy, is regularly seen. She looks around when it is discovered that Walter died just outside this classroom. She begins to investigate her surroundings and discovers an eyeball from Walter's toy. Florence goes ahead and installs many cameras in areas where the ghost is frequently sighted. She also scatters some powder in case the camera doesn't pick up on any footsteps. When she hears some strange noises, she decides to investigate. She notices a mirror and chooses to take a closer look. She notices a young boy's fingerprints. She notices a scent on the handle as well. Someone is rushing behind her while she is staring in the mirror. She instantly glances back, but no one is there. She notices little footsteps in the powder that go to the chamber. She enters the room but discovers just an odd piece of fabric. As she walks out of the room, she notices the kid. A bizarre dollhouse then piques her interest. She peeks inside and discovers that the dollhouse is an identical reproduction of the school. She feels someone behind her as she closes the door, but when she turns around, she sees no one. She feels perplexed as a result of this experience. Florence is taken aback when Robert appears unexpectedly. He claimed to have heard a peculiar noise, which motivated him to visit Florence. Florence checks the student's feet the next day and discovers powder residue on the foot of a youngster called Perry. She inquires about Perry's whereabouts last night. Perry gestures to another youngster and alleges he forced him to do it. Perry further claims that the youngster did not murder Walter because he was a buddy of his. Malcolm, a severe male instructor, becomes enraged at the charge and starts to beat the youngster who Perry has pointed out. Florence intervenes just before he is ready to beat him, revealing that she too smelt a scent on the door handle last night that mimics Malcolm's scent. The similar aroma was also discovered on one of Walter's toys. Malcolm is embarrassed and begins to disclose something. He explains that one night, Walter awoke and went to use the washroom, but he forgot his glasses. Walter was terrified by a fellow student who was wearing a blanket, and because he didn't have his glasses, he thought he saw a ghost. The youngster ran into Malcolm, who didn't aid him since he wanted the boy to face his anxieties. Unfortunately, the kid died as a result of a deadly asthma attack. Everything becomes evident after Malcolm's confession, and the headmaster dismisses him for such heinous deeds. The headmaster also takes a vacation for the entire school. Everyone returns home to their families, except for one boy named Tom, who stays behind because he has no family. Florence afterwards walks outside to light a cigarette, but it falls into the water. An unknown hand tries to grab her as she reaches down to pick it up. She loses her balance and falls right in there. Robert emerges out of nowhere and saves her as she fights to swim up. Then she goes inside and sees Tom, the youngster who stayed behind while his parents were away. She inquires about his family, to which he responds that he has very few family members, all of whom reside a long distance away. Tom asserts that there are many tigers in his family's village, and Florence begins to narrate a tiger narrative. Her parents nicknamed her Mousy when she was a youngster. They traveled to Africa, where her parents were killed by a tiger, but she was saved by villagers. She shows Tom the scar on her shoulder from the tiger's scratch. She then goes to the bathroom to shower. She notices a hole in the wall beneath the shower tap before she begins. She sneaks a peek inside and is startled to see a tiny boy's hazy face. She gets out of the restroom, terrified, and puts on her clothing. When she steps outdoors, she notices the boy. She begins to follow him and soon finds herself in a room with another dollhouse from the school. She gets closer and peeks inside, discovering a doll that looks just like her. The dollhouse appears to represent reality. Florence's doll is staring at a little playhouse, while a small boy stands behind Florence. A tiny boy is following her, which is an omen. She becomes terrified and glances behind her, but there is no one there. She immediately tells Robert about the incident. She insists that something is still going on and that the cameras should be turned back on. Florence begins to suspect Tom is a ghost since he can alter his appearance and move quickly between areas. She is both terrified and intrigued. Tom one day explains that he wants Florence to go through something so she can connect the dots and solve the riddle. Florence uses a thermometer to determine if there is a basement or an empty room beneath the cabinet because this area was considerably cooler than the rest of the room. She enters and discovers a bunny toy with a key. She informs Robert that they must lock all of the school's doors and windows and listen to what is recorded in the toy rabbit. But when Tom sees the rabbit, he becomes terrified. She assures Tom that she will not allow anything bad to happen to him. She attempts to cheer him up, but he leaves. Florence descends the stairs, but she overhears someone murmuring the name Mousy. She begins to suspect Tom is behind everything. She just gave him her childhood nickname, Mousy. She returns and tries not to touch the wires she has placed there. These cables were connected to the cameras so that when someone touched the wire, a photo was instantly taken. A guy and a lady arrive out of nowhere. The guy fires a shotgun at Florence, causing her to tumble and strike the wires. The cameras capture several images, but they are all of Florence collapsing. She stands up to see that the guy and lady had vanished. She accuses Tom of everything and goes to Robert in order to expose Tom. Robert is speechless, he has no idea who Tom is, and it has now been revealed that only Florence can see Tom. She returns to the classroom and notices the dollhouse. Tom arrives and declares that the solutions will be found within the dollhouse. When she checks inside, she discovers Florence and Tom are half-siblings who share a father. They used to reside in this school, which was also their home at the time. Florence's father appears as ruler of the home in a flashback. At the time, he seduced and pregnant the children's nanny, and Tom was their son. Florence's father was an aggressive man. Florence learns the truth about Tom when her mother falls pregnant again. She argues with her husband and demands that Tom and the nanny be removed. Florence's father, on the other hand, maintains that the nanny delivered him a son, which he had always desired. Eventually, the guy shoots his wife. She collapses to the ground, yet alive. Florence, the child, stands between her mother and father. The father shouts at her and urges her to go along. When Florence eventually flees, he shoots the mother again and kills her. Florence runs into a closet to hide. Inside, she discovers Tom, who is also terrified and attempting to hide. The father chases after her, mocking that he knows where his little Mousy is hiding. Florence is holding Tom, loving him, and attempting to calm his worry. She takes a doll to console him, and it begins to play a melody, revealing their hiding spot. The father fires his weapon into the cabinet, believing he is murdering Florence, but Tom falls out, dead and bloodied. He shoots himself with the same firearm he used to murder his only son. Florence is shown sitting on the steps in a state of shock as a servant puts a blanket over her shoulders in the wake of the slaughter. Florence is next seen at the school's kitchen table with Robert and Maud, telling the narrative of what she has discovered about herself. Maud was a teacher at the school, but Florence now knows she is Tom's mother. Maud poisons herself and Florence with the wine they were drinking, claiming that she will now be able to be with Tom. Florence instructs Robert to obtain something to make Maud vomit as she slumps to her death. He dashes to the medication cabinet, only to discover that it is locked. Florence invites Tom to utilize his abilities to locate something. Tom eventually gets Florence something she can use to vomit up and get the poison out of her system. The final shot shows Florence at school, where the new school year is beginning and parents are dropping off their children. Florence glides through without being recognized by anyone. Conversation fragments refer to Maud and Tom in the past tense. Robert and Florence talk about their plans for the next 2 weeks, when Florence will return to visit him. They have a smoke before she drives away in her car. Here, this movie ends. To watch more awesome and thought-provoking movie recaps, don't forget to like this video and tell us in the comments which movie you want to see next. Goodbye for now.